Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Choo choo, choo choo, unspun.
George. George. I thought it was so broken. Yay for the train. Yay for the Stanley Park train. Christmas train. Yay.
It's back. Didn't make it for Halloween, but which is, I think, the funnest one. But the Christmas train's back, which is great. Now, it took a bunch of corporate funding from donors of ABC Vancouver, but I don't have a problem with that. To be honest, I know that a lot of people. You remember the days when Park Board in Vancouver was like any corporate funding was like, oh, how dare you can't take any corporate funding for any events or any, and like even like I was on the Children's Festival board, and it was really challenging to acknowledge sponsors because it was considered bad for the kids and bad because of Park Board. And times have changed. Now it's like bring in the cash and fix the system.
See, I'm with you. It's a wild turn being born and raised here and watching that and being part of PR and marketing and promo and whatever. It's like a little bit of a sticky path. It's like, who's running this place and who can sponsor something, where that money goes, you know, does it go to the art form or does it go to the, you know, the corporate booth part? You know, there's a lot to kind of unpack. What I do like about what's happening here with the Stanley Park Christmas train is the piece that will support the charity, because the charity basically crashed without this train. Yeah. And it needed addressing urgently because charities are being taxed more than ever before with people who need them desperately. The thing that bugs me a little bit, well, not a little bit, it bugs me, is that it takes corporate money because the coffers are rich. I know everybody's crying poor, but the budgets are massive and getting bigger by the day, that they can't carve out just enough money to rebuild the tracks to the little train in Stanley Park was ridiculous when everybody was crying wolf and the sky was falling and every other fairy tale, you know, catastrophizing thing we can come up with. It's like kids pool is going to be closed for 2 years. Oh wait, no, we can open it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So we put out the easiest path that is the lazy route, excuse me, but it is. And then we wait for public backlash. Is it a sparkly thing? What's the spin here? Like, why couldn't it just have been fixed in the first place? Think of the people hours put into, let's save the train, that could be put into something else.
Well, I think mismanagement of Park Board for many years. I haven't seen a sign that, you know, they've been in power a year. I know that's great that they got the train up and running through private funding, but you know, this was such a priority. Wasn't there a way to get on that a year ago and start working on it and fix this train? Clearly they were able to do it in a month with the right money. Park Board has money. They have capital funds. It's just a matter of making decisions. So I don't know, you know, the back room on this and how this all panned out, because Ken Sim took all the credit, but he's not the chair of the Park Board. He's a mayor of Vancouver.
Tweet with Ken Sim dinging the bell on the train and photo op Ken. Fabulous, great, celebrate. Open Kit's Pool was my response to him.
Yeah,
if you're going to be involved, or just so that I can swim in it without going online 3 days in advance and booking a 40-minute window, please. Enough now. This is enough to make me dislike government at municipal government to the nth degree, when something so simple as just putting it back to the way it was before the pandemic. That's all you need to do. Open it up to people.
I know. We're going to get into the provincial government and then getting into municipal stuff later, because I think there's relevancy there.
Focus.
No, it's because it's relevant. I think, you know, we'll talk about housing later, which I think, what else could municipalities, you know what? If you're not doing your job, why do you have this job? I mean, as we talk about, and as we know, the provincial government works at the pleasure of, you know, they are an arm of the provincial government, municipal governments. So how's
that working for Surrey? How's that working for Surrey? Right? Like we're now, I think the only one that I regularly go, yes, is Brad West. The only
Well, Brenda Locke,
municipal.
did you see her? There was a headline I saw why Brenda Locke doesn't feel like she's getting any respect. It's Eby got booed out of the mayor's party, and it's like it's war time in Surrey against the provincial government. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the days of Vision in Vancouver against the BC Liberals. It was just like this animosity between the provincial and government and the city government, and that's I mean, it has a value if you're trying to achieve goals for your city. And in the case of Surrey, clearly we've talked about this a lot. What is Brenda Locke trying to achieve here? Well, maybe she's trying to really position herself as the leader of the Surrey, and that's her priority. And she feels the province is overstepped. And they seem to be doing a lot of that, as we'll talk about. But
Okay, well,
Ken Sim, though, 1 year.
Yeah,
1 year.
year.
So his
1 year.
announcement came on the heels of his 1 year anniversary as the mayor, and ABC is dominant force on Park Board, School Board, and Council in Vancouver. For those who don't know, in Vancouver, we have political parties. And for years was dominated by Vision. Prior to that, dominated by NPA. Now a new party, ABC Vancouver, last year won every single governmental structure in Vancouver or system. And as a result, we maybe get things done faster. The train being a good example of that. But what do you think? What's the reviews I read were lackluster of Ken Sim.
Well, I'm just going to point out that he is far better than his predecessor.
Low bar. Very, very,
very,
low bar.
very low bar to the mayor that we never saw, only heard from when it was a vanity project, has claimed, or absolutely, again, back to the catastrophizing of, oh, hey, we're in a once in a generation pandemic and we're screwed. I'll never forget him saying that if you're in trouble, no one's coming. We don't have any money. We're bankrupt. And if you need help, no one's coming to help you. I was just like, I'm having, yeah, and he's got this book that decrim now, that he's hawking a book that he's somehow fixed something.
Yeah.
Right. So when I look at Ken Sim, there are lots of things that Ken Sim does and says that I disagree with. So this is not like, congratulations, you're perfect. But I think, and I'm not sure, but I think this to be true, given all that you've taught me, I think that Ken Sim went in thinking, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, not wear a tie, and show people how this is done. And he got into the office and realized how little you can get done as a leader in municipal government. So he appears to be doing the things that he can do. I think there's a lot more broken with the Vancouver Charter, with how staff is directed, how council works, especially if they're sort of novice at it. And I'm a novice, so I wouldn't know how to do it better. But watching it and reporting on it, I'm like, oh God, really? We're doing that? Okay. It takes the provincial government to step in on some of these big things. And if I'm looking at Ken Sim, accessibility, he gets a win for me, because when I reach out to get a comment from him, if he doesn't have something in his schedule, he does go out of his way to at least give you access. Does he give you a stock standard crafted comms message? Yes, he does. Because you hear him on every other place, or deflects, which is, welcome to politics, right? But the actual wording is almost identical, which I take issue with.
Yeah, he's new.
Yeah,
he's still new.
He needs a little bit of media training on how to take that messaging and come up with a new way of saying it.
Yeah, maybe his communication staff. He lost another one. They've gone through a lot of staff in that mayor's office. Somebody else just left. They don't announce these things quite often. They just kind of fade away, and then you go on LinkedIn. So this was, I think it was Jen. It was Jen from where is she now? Jen. Anyways, there's tweets.
Jen Saint Denis.
Jane Saint Denis.
Dennis.
Yeah, Jane Saint Denis. Yes.
Yeah.
She tweeted that this senior staff communications person had now changed their LinkedIn profile and no longer was at the city.
Harrison Fleming, and it was Taylor Varell before that, and it was.
And then there was other people that co-management of the office. It's been many. And
so it just begs this?
Could be part of what you're just saying, that things aren't happening fast enough, and maybe the staff are either going, well, this is impossible, I'm frustrated and I'm out, or maybe Ken Sim saying you're out because you can't get this stuff done, or we're getting bad communication. Whose idea was for the beer shot? That thing is going to be with him forever. That shot of him guzzling a beer can.
Shotgunning a beer.
That will be the when they use for when he retires, when he dies. That'll be the shot for the rest of his life. That will be used. You gotta, it's like the dunk tank. Don't do the dunk tank if you're a politician. Just don't, unless you've got like a 6-pack. Gary Robertson did some things where he had a T-shirt and he got wet, and you had a 6-pack. So okay, but but the beer, drinking, alcohol, these are things that are, and just it's sure bringing the swagger back. I loved when he used that about the train. Bring the swagger back. It's like it's a choo-choo train in Stanley Park. But okay, that's swagger. Okay. I think, and then he was being interviewed by, I think it was a Dan Famano, and he goes and does these pull-ups.
Oh yeah.
I can do 15 more.
Because that's in his office. But that's how he stays fit. I mean, I give him
I know. It's just, it's a person. It's a spin though. It's literal flex. Yeah,
that is
literal
but
flex. That one.
There are a lot of people who can't do one chin up. So, I mean, and there's where I'm like, I know Ken Sim a little bit. Do I know him super well? No, but what I know of him, I think he's a good person. I think he's trying really hard. I think he's got a really crappy house that he was handed. Like when he makes the leaky roof analogy, I think he was handed, somewhat of a garbage dump of problems, and with broken relationships, and
that's
1
true.
year in, it could be way worse. How's that for a
I'm just still waiting for that. Yeah, no,
it's
that's
a
a good point.
solid C+. It's a solid
I would say
C+.
their biggest fail right now is budgeting. Where's the budget? Where are we at with that? Where is that committee? Have they reported back? They're a month late now. Budget's due in December generally. You can come in January if you want, but
didn't you tell them to not be in a huge rush with the budget? And now,
yes, you can go till March, April. Mm-hmm.
Right. But then that is his wheelhouse though, isn't it? So maybe he's a certified. Yeah. So, maybe he's like, no, not good enough. Send it back. Let's do that again. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this.
Because damn, Daniel, it's expensive to live here.
10% is what we're looking at, right? That's the last one we saw. The draft one was 10% increase. I haven't heard anything since. This is, we've talked about this. We talked about this 1 year ago at this time when they won, and we were talking. If you're going to do the things that are painful, do them quick.
Do them first. Yes.
Do them quick. Then you can bring in the good news for years 2 and 3 and 4. But they didn't do anything hard. That's one thing they did not do. They didn't make any big tough decisions. They did a couple of hard things. Oh, they cleared out the downtown east side. Yeah. That was not popular. Well, the clearing out? Mm-hmm. No, that started before they got in. That was a staff initiative. They actually activated the trucks. They did the sweep of the downtown east side that got, actually, I remember interviewing the mayor when he first was elected, and it was about the number of propane tanks they found on one city block. Yeah. And there were like 24 or don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure he said 24 of the massive industrial size ones that had something ignited. It could have taken out the whole city block. Like he was talking no, it's bad. Right. But so that's a pretty significant thing that he did in the first year. I'm just saying, I'm not arguing with you. No, I'm going to push back though, because that started before. You remember the fire department before in August of the election year. Nobody did anything. No, it started, but he followed through with it. He followed through with it. That's right. For sure. Because people talked about doing it for years. Yeah. People talked about doing it and thought about it and studied it and sent it over to a committee and had a conversation about it, and then had everybody weigh in on it, and then had a back room in-camera meeting about it, and then another one. And then suddenly it was like, okay, we're going, everybody. Here's your 24 hours notice to pack up your stuff because it's time to go. I don't necessarily. Is that what you're saying? Oh my God. And I don't necessarily agree with that's how it should have done, because I don't know where people ended up, other than I'm hearing from councillors in New Westminster saying a lot of people got on the SkyTrain and just went to the next stop and got off and camped there. Well, they're certainly around my office here up in Mount Pleasant. I mean, I have a little campsite behind my office last night that I had to tell my owner, like, hey, do you know there's little about 7 tents in the parking spots in the back? Yeah. Where are people? So then they were on the front deck. I know, and they were on the front deck this morning, and there was literally must have had a bonfire on my front porch of my office. There was a little fire, burnt ground. So, I'm like, I don't want my office to burn down. But I can't, there's not much you can do. I'm not here. They're generally gone in the morning, but they're a fire truck going by here. Speaking of which, it's like, look out your window. Timing. Yeah. So yeah, they did move. They moved around. They left it down and sit there, but they're still out there because they don't feel safe in a lot of these places that they're provided. They're horrible, horrible
Yeah.
buildings. Some of them dangerous, full of stuff. So they sometimes feel safer living in tents. That's madness. That's madness,
Isn't it? Isn't it?
So that's
let's
the
talk
province.
about let's talk about housing. Let's talk about housing and what might change here. With the big sweeping, and you've been talking about towers forever, and certainly we agreed for because I miss gentle density. I want everything to look like Europe with really low rise, but a kabillion of them, so there's room for everybody to live. And you love a tower, you love Burnaby, and my middle ground on that,
a mix.
My middle ground on that is putting towers around transit. That makes all kinds of sense to me. That makes all kinds of sense. What we see all the way along the Canada line, what we see, all the way along the Evergreen line, all the things we've seen around SkyTrain, like that to me makes sense. So the province now saying no discussion, minimum 20 stories. In Vancouver, you can go as high as the developer wants to, but it's a minimum of 20 stories attached to hubs, right?
Yeah, there's two things here from my point of view. One is, well, Vancouver in this council currently, we're already pushing forward with that anyways. There were some stations in Nanaimo station which has no density around it, some crazy places like that. There's not only SkyTrain stations they're talking about bus routes as well. So within 400 meters of train stations and 800 meters of train or bus hubs, whatever that might be, I guess bus loops and things like that. So that actually is significant because you think about all the bus loops that are all over the place, that if you've ever taken buses, they're very small quite often, but they're loops.
There's one at 41st and Dunbar. So let's see those Southlands people lose their minds with 20-story buildings down there, because there's no building over 4 stories down there.
I know they don't even like 5-story buildings.
No.
I know. And so there's two things that happen. So one is that this is once again, as the province, as we were sort of touching on earlier on regarding, just not getting anything done and the province taking over. Yeah. This is just an example of the province going, enough. Let's just do this. And so kudos. I mean, I think that for whatever reason, the BC Liberals, now they call BC Unite, never wanted to go there. Any previous government wanted to go there. And so I think Eby has definitely made it a mandate to say, you know what, enough of this. This is ridiculous. You're taking too long. It doesn't change, though, the speed at which the bullshit bureaucracy of staffing and application forms and things you have to pay and environmental assessments and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. That's still stuck. And so you could say, you could build a 20-story tower there, but if you can't get it through City Hall, well, if you're still in business by the end of it at this rate, it's a miracle. But it's and so what else is the province going to start saying? Okay, roads. What next? It's interesting. They're taking away the power of the public hearing process in this case, absolutely, as well as other aspects. So I think it's a wake-up call for municipal governments that you're no longer in touch with reality and you're just creating blockages of progress for anywhere and a growing region. We talk about the numbers all the time, Jody. I think 6,000 to 8,000 people in Vancouver every year moving here. It doesn't change. And then across the region, we're talking 50,000 people moving in the Lower Mainland or more.
So let's talk about that. Exactly. Where are they going to live? Where indeed? So I was listening to the Mike Smith show this morning, actually, while I was running around, and I heard him speaking to someone. I wish I could remember her name now, from BC United. She's like a hardcore pro Airbnb, and was talking about people in Victoria who had bought purpose-built units that were small, meant to be short-term rentals. And how those people are now, and she was going on this whole thing about how poor Airbnb hosts, and all I could think of the whole time was, or the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who can't find a place to rent to live. Have you seen some of the Etsy Craigslist postings where it's like $1,000 per bed in a room in a house, like two crappy, looks like they saved him from the Sally Ann beds And for $1,700 each, you can live in this apartment.
Like New York.
It is. So
yeah.
you can't tell me, and the argument was that these suites, nobody's going to rent them because they're small. They're meant for Airbnb. I know right off the top of my head, 15 people who would rent that right now. They won't rent it for what an Airbnb goes for per night, though. That's the problem. So the argument was these people were conned into by the government buying these under one set of rules. Then the rules changed. And in my head, I'm like, okay, let's talk about taxis. Let's talk about video rental stores. Let's talk about, all of the other industries and businesses that are impacted by modernization or changes in the way communities need to be built in order to thrive. I am not anti-rental. I'm not a Airbnb short-term rental. I'm just not a user of them. I look at the city of Vancouver being completely sold out because Taylor Swift's coming to town, and now hotel rooms are going for $1,000 on the North Shore.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Which in my head goes, well, maybe I will rent out my house.
Yeah,
for
maybe I will.
3 days.
We'll see you
but
in New
you're
York.
allowed to. Right. But you're exactly. We're allowed to rent out our primary residence. And then it got into like, if they loosen it up so you could just have one property that you own aside from your primary resident that you could then short-term rental. And then it's like, well, all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of numbered companies with a whole bunch of, all of a sudden my son owns a short-term rental. And, there are loopholes that people are going to find. So,
what was a loophole?
This housing thing, it's like, I see why the move is so sweeping right now. Because as you said, with 6,000 people moving here,
you wouldn't worry about Airbnb. You wouldn't worry about Airbnb if there was enough units being built and the prices were low and all those things. For those people who did take that risk and thought that this would be a good business model, I mean, that's not what it was. Airbnb was not intended for that in my mind. It was people who had their apartments, and if they wanted to rent them out when they were away or whatever, that was kind of the original concept. If you're going, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, I'm going to rent my place, or I had a room or whatever. I mean, it became a business to rely on a new technology system that has yet to be, legislated into, structurally in the government. You're taking a risk, and just for the purposes of anybody in British Columbia, pretty much if your unit is under $1 million, they're still selling. You can sell those units. It shouldn't be a problem. And guess what? There's a lot of people
took a 30% hit just by what the government did. And I'm like, really?
No, not only to people who might have bought them for the purposes of Airbnb them, for as units to live in. No way. I mean, condos you look around, there's no condos under $1 million that are really for sale. And there certainly is any houses in the $1 million mark or, getting sold. Anything over $1 million is tougher for sure right now.
Right.
But
it's tougher.
That's what we need. We need cheaper units. So sell it. Sell your units. Sell your 1 bedrooms, please.
It's Karen Kirkpatrick, BC United MLA. Karen Kirkpatrick.
Okay, yeah. The one that BC United, remember we had that conversation, I was wondering why BC United hadn't come out in any kind of strong way. And because, I've been open about my feelings about Airbnb. I still think it's a good thing for people to have, but I also believe that we need to get more units built ASAP. And what is we should be focusing on that. All this dither around with this policy and hiring $30 million of staff every year for City of Vancouver to manage the empty homes tax and the Airbnb thing. $30 million a year we spend as taxpayers to manage this department now, to take care of an issue that if we just built another 1,000 units a year, we wouldn't have that problem.
So the other argument, because I remember Mike was pushing back to say, I think the need is greater for society to have places for people to live than it is to make sure that couple in Victoria could reap the benefits of their Airbnb purchase. The other pushback was, well, only certain people have a primary residence that they can rent out under this new legislation. Because, as I said, it's like if you have a mother-in-law suite or a laneway house, or you travel and you put your primary residence up, the argument was that's leaving people out. That is only for wealthy people. And I'm like, okay, still, I see like somewhere you came up with that as an argument. But it's in the environment that we find ourselves right now, it falls flat for sure. It falls flat when people don't have anywhere to go. And a matchbox of a place where a family of 4 is crammed into 500 square feet. they still can't afford groceries. Like, come on. We got to make it so people can actually live and work here. That's what needs to happen.
And for those Airbnbers who didn't see this wave coming, which started back when I was on council in 2017, when the policy in Vancouver was set, that was the beginning of it. You should have looked at your business model and thought, this might be a bit risky.
Of course it's risky.
It's hard to sympathize or empathize.
Well, keeping on it, let's talk about Shaughnessy.
Yes, well, that was Christine Boyle's bringing forward a motion to. She is the left-wing party person on city council, and this is, if for those who don't know Shaughnessy in Vancouver, it's the hoity-toity area of the city, just sort of up in the hill, sort of South Granville, and it's very beautiful houses, protected, and I think I support that, and actually most councils have supported that. It's a question of density of living in these units, and we did add, when I was there, some density to the units. When you do renovate, you can add a significant amount of density. So there was actually something we did when I was there, but she's asking for a massive re-densification, rebuilding of how they're densified. I think I know it seems crazy that we have this beautiful neighborhood right outside, right, basically in our downtown almost. It's like 5 minutes downtown, and there's this neighborhood that's unbelievable, beautiful houses. But I also think, isn't that an important piece of our heritage? And I would hate to see them gone. But I do also hate to see people when they, letting them fall apart, because they don't want to. There's a whole other issue related to this when you have people buy these units, and then in order to meet the city's criteria to not be able to rebuild, they just let them die, just disintegrate, and then they say, "Oh well, it's disintegrate, it's falling apart. I got to tear it down." So there's people who play with that, which is unfortunate. But it's harder now because we put in some policies when I was there. So I do agree with it, though. I think there's not huge opportunity for massive amounts of density in there. I think that would be really good. It's a beautiful neighborhood, lots of little green areas. I would say don't tear it down. Just add more densities. You can fit beautiful apartments and basement suites and units. Way back, my sister lived in Shaughnessy. She was a nurse, and she was at school, and she worked in what was a seniors, extended care building. This old house had, I think there's like 20 older folks in there that were, in rough shape. So it was very extended care. She lived in the attic. Oh, her daughter. It was a really cool space. And then there was somebody who lived in the basement. And then there was all these bedrooms that these people lived in. It was a beautiful house with a beautiful garden. It actually got converted back into a single family home somehow, some years later. But it was a great solution. There was at least 15 to 20 people there, and they were employing people that were working there. It was a great concept, and there's no way you would even have known that was there driving by it. You could not tell that there was 15 or 16 people living in that building. There's no way. You couldn't have told. Right. And more of that, I totally agree with it. Why not? Why not?
Why not? Why not, indeed? Because I'm of two minds of it. I love saving heritage homes. I love that, when you drive through the West End, and the handful of the very, very earliest of homes down there. I think those are special. I think that there are some special ones in Shaughnessy as well, but I think that the time is here where you should leave it up to a certain degree of densification being allowable to the property owner, period. And that the NIMBYs in the neighborhood are going to need to just because I do live in what used to be on a piece of property that used to be one big character home, and now houses 8 families. And
you'd never know it. I honestly,
know it.
I go to your place, I'm going, where are these people? Where is these houses?
I don't typically talk about where I live because it's so unique that people can figure out where I live almost. So it's like, I don't want to go too deep into it, but I'm just going to say that not everything, to the NIMBYs out there, number one, not everything is bad and a tower and going to be built 9,000 times larger than your worst nightmare. And that is catastrophizing, densifying to many people is catastrophe. Number two, for example, Casamia down on Southwest Marine Drive, that beautiful old mansion
with all the heritage for us to approve.
Right.
When I was on
forever
council.
Just opened as a long-term care home. My mom and my stepdad were the very first residents there in the beautiful master suite in what was that beautiful mansion. And I'm telling you, George, the stories from the family that created this space for long-term care that has subsidized and private pay beds alike So it's not just a wealthy person's place. And it's unbelievable what they've kept, what they've preserved. And when they talk about the NIMBYs that fought against this long-term care home space being used, like they'd rather have had it torn down and just sold off to whomever than to be used. And now they're saying that most of those NIMBYs 20 years later or 17 years later, I think it was how long it's taken to come through, they all want to live there. So of all the people standing around in their Shaughnessy neighborhood with their hands on their hips going, not in my neighborhood, you know what? You're not going to even be here when it's more densification. Like, you got to start modernizing the way your head works around your neighborhood. Like Kitts Point people freaking out about the road going into Sanok. Get over it. It's happening. Get your head around it. It's happening. And if you don't want to live in a city, move. I'm sorry, but there's no dead to rights. I lived here for my whole life, therefore that place across the street can't change. It's just, it doesn't work.
Lots of green space in the valley.
Right. Or like, and again, don't get me wrong, I love my neighborhood. I don't want it all to change. I don't want to live amidst a bunch of towers. So if they said, we're going to put an apartment building on every corner around you, I'd be like, okay, but how tall is it going to be? Like, am I going to live in shade? Is there going to be the tree that's in front of my house? Is that going to die because I'm living in a thing? So I would probably be like, hey, can we be mindful of the green space that's around us as well? But if everybody's like, no, it's this and it's going to look like that, and we've thought that through, and there's enough space here. And I looked at one building downtown and I was really quite surprised. I'm like, it really does make sense. The size of this tower makes all, like, it's well done. But some of them are just like,
well, in Yaletown where I live, so it's Point Tower and townhouses, right?
Yeah.
And before my building was there, it was a gas station and a bunch of industrial buildings, no green. And now if you go to our building, well, first of all the townhouses have green roofs. Like we have massive amounts of trees on our roofs.
Love it.
And there's the volleyball court sort of area and this communal area, which has tons of foliage, green. And then the tower itself is quite narrow. It's a point tower, so it doesn't take up a lot of real estate. It's basically the size of the gas station. And so it's, I don't know how much, it's about half acre of land with 300 units in it. And in that one block where I live in Yaletown, there's my building, there's four, there'll be a fourth one being built now. So there's 4 towers, which would house houses. I would say there's probably 1,500 people living in one block, like just area.
And
it's
in
like
Shaughnessy, that
would
one
be one
block,
house.
exactly, maybe 2. Like, I don't know when the last time you drove through the rich part of Shaughnessy. It's unbelievable. And there, I know a couple who are in their mid 80s. They can't even enjoy their green space that they have, their grounds that they have. They don't want any densification. They don't want any change of any kind. And they really aren't even using the space. And it is the size of what would be an inner city school grounds. Like, it's park space. And that you could foreseeably add 2 or 3 or even 4 small houses with different addresses that you could still keep your grounds and you can still, you know what I mean? Like, so
they don't want anybody living
in there, but they don't want anybody living in their house. That's their thing. So if they want to keep their house, at least give them the opportunity to build for their son-in-law, their daughter, their nephew, their grandchild, whatever.
Yeah. And there are some examples in Shaughnessy of that, because I had to walk around there when I ran for office and got to see a lot of backyards, which was pretty cool. And there's some really unique stuff that there's not enough of it.
Right.
And so Shaughnessy's like, we have the 2 extremes there. We have where I live, which of course doesn't work everywhere. You're right. I don't say that we should have towers everywhere. I've never said that.
Did you
but
say
it does work.
Right?
Nobody complains about a tower being built in Yaletown.
Right.
And that's where we need to get to. You put towers where people are okay with towers. And this decision by the provincial government says, okay, we've got trains. This makes sense. If you've gone to any major city, generally you'll see density around the train stations. And when it's not,
100%.
that's weird. That's weird. And so, and then if you're going to have a process where, like, if you're going to put density in other areas, of height, you got to have a robust process because that's just not fair. And you know, you can get so much density. You look what's being built along Cambie, and you know, 3 stories, mostly townhouses, all the way down, which are replacing a lot of these Shaughnessy houses on the peripheries, on the outsides, that used to be single family homes, and now have sometimes 8 to 12 townhouses.
So
and those
great.
are easy and fast to build.
Let's
you build
go.
those in a year and a half.
But everybody
they're
wants
done.
to live in one. Everybody wants to live in one of those. It's a dream for
And
most
then they
families.
walk into Shaughnessy and they got that as their green area. So at least
right.
around it, densify and do it nicely, gently, as you say. It's totally possible.
We're running out of time, and we
Wow.
haven't even gotten to 4, 5, 6, or 7. Did you have one in particular one to hit off the back end here?
No, I think we got. No, we're good. I mean,
what did you want to say about my Hilary? Around. What did you want to say?
Oh
about
yeah,
I
just you tweeted Hilary's her interview on The View, which is my favorite talk show.
It's not your favorite talk show.
It's no, it's a bit much, but I thought it was a good, her encapsulation of what's going on in the Middle East was quite good. There's a few other of these that are quite out there that kind of explain this history, even recent history she was focused on from 1990, and how things happened. I think it's worth looking up. Check Jody's tweets, and you can see it there. It was a very interesting.
And that's just 8 minutes of it. That's only 8 minutes of what she was on for the whole hour. And honestly, George, I tape The View. I tape a bunch of shows, but I tape The View, and I always watch it. And I watched it, and then I rewound while I was watching. I'm like, hold on, say that again. Like, hold on, who, where, how did that? And
yeah,
she explains it in such a straightforward. God, it would have been so great if she had been president instead of Donald Trump. That's what I said at the end of it. I'm like, oh my God, this woman is really brilliant. And you know, the fact that people have been so propagandized by things around the Clinton family, and just she has nothing to gain, nothing to lose, and she's just putting it out there, and she's really moderate on it, and very good at explaining it, and really. So head to Twitter. You can find George on Twitter, of course. He is at George _Affleck, at George _Affleck. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y. Unspunpodcast.com is where you send this link to your friends. We arrive in your inbox every Thursday. And we try and get through as many topics as we can. And today we were just going on about it.
There was a few we didn't get to, but I think I'll bring those up next week because I think they're pretty good. One is related to the federal government, and Trudeau, just
the other one.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Yeah.